And so I wanted to start out our conversation. The Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares, is with us for his monthly visit, and I appreciate you coming on, Attorney General Miyares. What are you hearing or what are you tracking at Virginia schools? I hope it's not as bad as what we've seen at some of the Ivy League Northern premier institutions, but what are you seeing in Virginia? And good morning to you, and I appreciate you coming on.
Morning to you, John. I mean, listen, I had a conversation with a dear friend of mine yesterday who just shared. She said, this is the first time in my life I've been afraid to be Jewish in America.
Really?
And she's in her 70s. And so I do think you are seeing an explosion of anti-Semitism. And then on college campuses, we've seen some of it for sure in Virginia, not as bad as what we've seen in Cornell and a couple other schools. I do think that the conflict is going to go on for a while. And a lot of people are wondering, I've had several friends of mine that are liberal saying, I just don't understand how this could be happening on college campuses, which I don't think conservatives are surprised by this.
No.
We have been seeing a trend in college campuses and academia for a while where it has shifted from being liberal, and academia has always been a little bit left of center, to just leftist. They've gone from liberal to leftist. And it really is in many ways almost like a neo-Marxist worldview that has gotten grips on our college campuses, where they put everything under a power hierarchy, and everybody, no matter who you are, you're labeled oppressor or oppressed. And it could be your sexuality, it could be your race, it could be your ethnic background, but everybody is simply put in this little buckets. And I like to say that the most heinous thing about identity politics is it robs you of your individual dignity and responsibility. So that's the first thing. The other thing is they have a completely distorted view of what's happening in the Middle Eastern conflict, because Israel did in 2005 everything that the media and the left has asked them to, which is they gave land for peace. They pulled out of Gaza completely. They had previously occupied it. They pulled out of Gaza. They even went in and knocked down settlements from Jewish settlers and forcibly evicted them out of Gaza and turned it over back to the Palestinians. So they did exactly what the world has asked them to do. And what they got in return was Hamas was elevated in power, and they started doing daily rocket attacks onto Jewish settlements and Jewish homes. And I've been to Sderot, one of the towns that have been hit so hard. And I could tell you, John, it is unnatural to sit on a playground, a child's playground, and see bomb shelters. But that's what they were living with, daily rocket attacks. And people are shouting things like, oh, they need a ceasefire. There was a ceasefire in place. They had a small conflict before back in 2018 and 2021. They had a ceasefire in place. And the people that broke it was Hamas, whose charter says we value death more than you Jews love life. And they broke in October 7th, and they specifically targeted the innocent. They went into towns and they butchered babies. They raped moms in front of their children. They summarily executed and brought babies back into Gaza. And I think that we have these college students that at a time when we need moral clarity, just absolute moral confusion, that are marching on college campuses saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Right.
Well, here's my question. When you are saying that, John, what you're saying is you're advocating for the destruction of 8 million Jews that live in Israel. Because what are you going to do with them? What do you mean by that?
Right.
What are you going to do with 8 million Jews? Because the great irony in all of this, John, is when you look at the Middle Eastern conflict, it's analyzed and it's talked about, but it's not that hard to look at how you solve it. No one wants to solve it, particularly on one side, because if right now Israel was to lay down its arms and say, we will fight no more, there would be a Holocaust, there would be a slaughter. But if Hamas, if the Palestinians were to lay down their arms and say, we will fight no more, we will accept a two-state solution, there would be peace tomorrow. And that shows you what we're dealing with. One side wants the other side wiped off the face of the earth. The other side says we want to try to find a way to get to a two-state solution, but you are constantly attacking civilians, and you walk away from it. They walked away from it at the Oslo Accords multiple times. They've had chances to have a two-state solution. They had a chance with Gaza. Gaza was turned over to the Palestinians to run themselves. The only thing the Israelis got in return was death and destruction.
I think
it's
that
really,
analysis,
really tragic.
I think that analysis is correct, and I witnessed it up close when I was living in the Middle East. I'm wondering what we do on college campuses, though, where we protect free speech, but we don't allow people to basically say, I want to kill you, or to physically touch somebody. I mean, you and I or we could hypothetically have a debate at, say, University of Virginia, where you just analyze the situation, and then somebody else got up and gave a different analysis of it, and then we let the audience decide. But if the other person stands up and says, "Well, you deserve to die like the Jews do," that seems to cross a line. What's the legal adjudication of that, and what role does your office have in trying to figure this out in Virginia schools?
We've been advising the college campuses on what is that line, and First Amendment jurisprudence is interesting and complicated. So college campuses can, in many ways, in one way, regulate time and place, but not content. You could say no one is allowed to have any type of political march at all on the steps of the rotunda at UVA. But if you allow for one, as long as they follow whatever the procedure, filing the proper form with student activities, you have to allow it for all. Right. However, free speech, as you often hear, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You also can't conduct yourself in a speech that's going to create imminent threat and harm to an individual. In other words, if somebody was to get up what you described and said, we now need to go kill, all the Jewish students on campus or assault them.
There you go. That's the line.
That is not First Amendment protected speech, right? That's an imminent threat of physical danger and harm on a fellow student. And so what we're trying to do is educate all the universities and universities councils. Where's the line? It also means that you can't allow a mob to come onto your campus that aren't students to suddenly march on campus shouting things as well. But this also is a moment I think is really important. These college presidents around the country did not lose their own First Amendment rights. And it is a problem we've seen the last decade or two in higher ed, where they view the students not as students, but as customers. They're students. It is a privilege to be there. You also have a moment to have moral clarity to speak out. And we were all horrified in 2017 at the Unite the Right rally at Charlottesville when the bigots were marching through the campus with tiki torches shouting, "The Jews will not replace us." And all of these college presidents condemned it, rightly so. Where are they now? Because I would argue you're having the equivalent of multiple Unite the Right rallies on some of these college campuses with some of what is being said. And so while it may be protected speech, these college presidents can provide moral clarity. And I think part of the problem is they view these as simply customers and not students. So they're
intimidated for some
reason. And they need
to
speak up.
It's a very
they need to speak up.
Dynamic. All right, two more things, and then I got to run. And you're not going to like my next question. And I need to ask you about this UVA report. And I know what I've read in the paper is that you can't comment on and you did not release it to the public because of the client relationship you have with the University of Virginia. But speaking of UVA's president, I don't trust these people. And so I kind of feel like I need to see what was in the report before I get some regurgitated garbage from the leadership at UVA that you don't have to agree with me, but I don't trust them. So what do you say to me when I throw that at you?
Well, you have to realize as Attorney General, every state institution also is a legal client of mine, and so I am barred by state ethics and bar ethics from revealing privileged information or communication with my client, and so I have to. I'm also, I wear a lot of hats as Attorney General, and I take an oath to uphold the Constitution of Virginia and the United States and enforce the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm also a licensed member of the Virginia Bar. I have to be in order to do this job.
But they can't deep six this thing, can
ethics.
They can't deep six it for the next 6 months and say,
what I can speak to is what they have said publicly and made public statements, which they have made public statements that the information from the report would be released to the public at the appropriate time. But again, this is communication they have, and it is. That's all I could say.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if you were still a member of the House of Delegates, I'd be all over you like, you guys need to turn up the heat on these jerks and make them do something. They need to answer to the legislature if they're using taxpayer money for this. And I think we're going to find – I don't know what your report says, but I think we're going to find out these guys screwed up big time, and there was a racial component in this, and they need to answer for it. But okay. At least I got a chance to talk to you about it. I appreciate your openness. Real quick, I got to run. What do you think of the elections? Real fast, last 30 seconds.
Last 30 seconds is help Glenn Youngkin, help myself. We need common sense Republicans and conservatives in Richmond to push back on this far left agenda that we're seeing both on our college campuses and anti-police. And there's a lot of really the great things we've done so far. There's a lot more great things we could do if we have Republicans in control in the General Assembly. And I think people are desperate for common sense, and that's exactly what we've delivered so far. We want to continue to do so.
The Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. I do appreciate that you come on and you subject yourself to my curveballs every month. Thank you for
problem.
that. All right, thank you.
Great to be with you, John.
It's
Thanks.
8:50. We'll be back with more tomorrow on News Radio WRVA.